She thought she could control everything in the neighborhood, the lawns, the cars, even the families who lived there. But one evening, when a young black father gently carried his newborn home, her obsession crossed a line no one could have imagined. In a heartbeat, what should have been the safest, most tender moment of his life turned into a nightmare fueled by prejudice and power. She tried to take what was never hers, but what she didn't know about him would change everything. What happens when racism meets a man trained to survive anything? Marcus had always dreamed of quiet stability after years of grueling Navy SEAL deployments. Finally, with his wife and their newborn daughter, he'd found a tour, so he thought. Their suburban neighborhoods seemed picture-perfect: neat lawns, trimmed hedges, and streets where children rode bikes under the glow of summer evenings. For Marcus, returning to civilian life meant protecting something far more precious than any battlefield: his family's peace. But peace didn't always come easy. Subtle stares lasted too long, whispered comments lingered just out of earshot, and the homeowners association, the so-called guardians of neighborhood standards, treated Marcus's family like newcomers who didn't belong. Still, he brushed it off. He had faced worse. What Marcus couldn't know was that one neighbor wasn't just watching him, she was planning, and before long, her obsession would ignite a moment so shocking it would shatter that fragile sense of safety forever. At first, the tension revealed itself in small, almost invisible ways. Notices from the HOA slipped into Marcus's mailbox: warnings about non-compliant garden plants, fines for a stroller supposedly left too close to the front step, even a notice about the paint color of his newly purchased home. None of his white neighbors seemed to get these letters. Yet Marcus's family received them week after week. His wife brushed them off as nitpicking and prejudice dressed up as policy. Marcus agreed, but deep down he knew what it truly was. Someone had decided that his family didn't belong. Still, he tried to stay calm. He had endured combat zones. Surely suburbia couldn't break him. But then came the stares whenever he lifted his newborn daughter outside for fresh air. The way neighbors clutched their dogs' leashes tighter when he walked by. The whispers about safety whenever he lingered too long near the community playground. It wasn't subtle anymore. They weren't just enforcing rules, they were questioning his very right to exist in the space he'd worked so hard to earn. And at the heart of it all was her. The woman neighbors quietly called Karen. She wielded the HOA bylaws like a weapon, hiding her prejudice under credentials. She began appearing at odd times, standing at the edge of her driveway when Marcus returned from a late-night store run, lurking close by whenever his wife wheeled the stroller down the street. Each glance was sharp, accusing, as though she was waiting for Marcus to slip, waiting for something to justify what she already believed, that he was a danger. One humid evening, her obsession boiled over. Marcus had just carried his infant daughter home after a sunset walk, her tiny head nestled against his chest, when Karen stormed toward him. Loud, insistent, she accused him of endangering the child, claiming no suspicious man had the right to walk a baby in her community without proving who he was. Her words dripped with venom, twisted as concern but poisoned with something far uglier. Her rant grew louder, drawing neighbors out from behind their curtains. Phones came out. Some filmed, others whispered. No one intervened. Marcus tightened his arms around his baby, his training telling him to stay calm, to assess, to avoid escalation. But Karen wasn't finished. She lunged forward, reaching toward the newborn as though she had the right to take her. In that moment, the suburban illusion shattered. This wasn't about property codes or strollers by the steps. This was about power, about a woman who believed her rules, her whiteness, her authority over the neighborhood gave her the right to snatch a black child from her own father's arms. Marcus didn't budge. His arms locked around his daughter, his voice steady but laced with fire. He warned her without words. Still, she smirked, convinced the crowd would support her, convinced he would crumble. But Karen had no clue who she was really up against. The man she had targeted wasn't just another neighbor. He was a Navy SEAL, trained to protect, trained to survive. And what unfolded next would leave the neighborhood shaken and Karen utterly blindsided. Karen's hand sliced through the air as she lunged, claws practically reaching for the baby bundled against Marcus's chest. The crowd gasped, whispers swelling into a nervous chorus. For Marcus, time slowed, adrenaline flooding his veins, instincts honed from battle roaring awake. But this wasn't a mission overseas. This was his own doorstep, his child, his life. He stepped back, muscles tight as steel, his body coiled between Karen's outstretched fingers and the fragile weight in his arms. He had been trained to neutralize threats in seconds, but here he faced a twisted kind of violence, one wrapped in privilege, masked as concern. And that made it more dangerous than any armed opponent he had faced in the field. Karen screamed accusations into the night sky. Words like unfit and unsafe spilled from her mouth, her voice frantic and venomous, designed to sway the bystanders and paint Marcus as some lurking criminal. She pointed at him, at his skin, as if that alone justified her madness. Then blue lights flashed. A squad car rolled up, sirens slicing through the chaos. Relief flickered on some faces, suspicion hardened on others. Karen rushed toward the officers, spinning her story, pointing wildly at Marcus, clutching his newborn. She painted herself as the savior, the woman who bravely stopped a kidnapper hiding in plain sight. For a heartbeat, Marcus felt the air tighten, danger thrumming louder than in any war zone. His past battles had taught him one cruel truth. Sometimes survival depended more on perception than skill. And in this neighborhood, in that moment, Karen's lies threatened to cage him in. The lights glared, the officer's eyes swept over him, over the baby, over the woman shrieking her slanted narrative. Voices murmured, phones recorded, but no one stopped it. Marcus's chest heaved as he held firm, standing unshaken as the line between hero and villain wavered in the night. He knew this was the tipping point. One wrong move, one wrong assumption, and the life he fought to protect could be torn apart before the world's eyes. And then everything shifted in a single breath. The silence after Karen's tirade was deafening. Officers examined Marcus carefully, eyes narrowing as they took in the steady calm in his stance, the protective way he cradled his child, his military credentials, his life of service, his quiet dignity. All of it stood in stark contrast to the venom spilling from Karen's lips. One officer asked a single question, and within seconds her story began to unravel. Neighbors' phones had caught everything. Her screams, her attempts to snatch the baby, her baseless rage. The truth was undeniable. Karen's face shifted from fury to panic as she realized the power she thought she held had slipped away. This time, her lies didn't land. This time, she was the one escorted away. Marcus never raised his voice, never lost control. Yet he had endured a battle more draining than any he fought overseas. Not because of danger in the shadows, but because of racism presented in the full glare of daylight, right in front of his own home. For Marcus and his wife, that night left a scar, not on their bodies, but on their sense of safety. It was a brutal reminder that prejudice doesn't need weapons, it only needs entitlement, belief in superiority, and silence from those who should know better. And yet, out of that moment came something darker, and something brighter. Darker, because it exposed how easily Black families can be criminalized simply for existing in spaces they've earned. Brighter, because the truth was captured, shared, and seen. No one could deny anymore what had happened. But the question lingers. How many more Marcuses are out there? Never believed, never recorded, never vindicated. How many families carry quiet scars from battles fought not in war, but at their own front doors? This isn't just his story. It's a mirror. And the reflection it shows demands an answer, not tomorrow, not someday, but now.